This is going to be very rough. I do have a few things planned out, but for the most part it's going to be me YOLOing this guide for you. We're going to be going over 4 different things, okay? We're going to be going over keybinds and some recommendations I have for you guys if you guys are having problems with your keybinds. Some add-ons I think will help. Some stuff you can do with your UI to help. And then, of course, basically I'm going to do like a macro guide, how you can build macros, some important macros to have, and then actually show you how you can just make them yourself instead of always wondering about what macros I have. You can just think about the ones you need and use them. So, bindings. Bindings. What are some important binds? Well, the answer to that question is everything's an important bind. Binds I recommend, and you can actually just go in and bind these in key bindings, targeting. As far as targeting goes, I think it's important to have a tab target bound. I use tab target to target nearest enemy sometimes. I think it's very important to have target arena 1, target arena 2, target arena 3 bound, focus arena 1, focus arena 2, and focus arena 3. And if you're a healer, target party member 1, 2, and self is very important. So you can easily target yourself, the other person in your party, and then the third person in your party, of course. The reason these binds are important is because sometimes, I will admit, sometimes I actually do click the target. As like a healer, I'll click a frame to target, or if I am DPSing, sometimes if I'm like doing an action, so like I'm sheeping someone, I'll click on the other person. Because my hand's already busy spamming sheep or whatever, then I'll use my mouse to actually click on someone. But as far as like efficiency goes, it's really important to have these bound, especially when you don't know where the enemy team is, or like if the battlefield is very chaotic and it's not easy to click on something if there's tons of totems and pets around. I'll give you an example. One of the reasons Beastcleave was so hard originally when it came out is because no one used these binds, and there was just large pets everywhere. So you just had the enhancement shaman with 2 wolves, and obviously the enhancement shaman, the BM hunter, and then of course all the totems. And it was just impossible to be as efficient as you wanted to be because you couldn't actually target things fast. You had to like click through all the little pets that are on you that are 5 times bigger than normal. So yeah, this is definitely important. As far as other binds, I think you should literally have every ability you have bound. Every ability you have, bind it, unless it's an ability you don't use at all. Every macro you have, bind it. If you're concerned or worried about not having enough keybinds, I mean, the only movement you really need on WoW is, in my opinion, strafe left and right, and move forward. So you only need these 3 movement abilities. You don't need turn left, you don't need turn right, you don't need back pedal. I have them bound, but that's because I don't have a problem with with space. So assuming I only have these 3 things bound, left, right, forward, we can say that's QWE. You have tilde, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, R, T, A, S, D, F, G, Z, X, C, V, that you can bind, as well as F1, F2, F3. You can use mouse button 4, you can use mouse button 5. Then of course you have modifiers for all of that. So if you want to bind like focus arena 1, 2, 3 for example, you can use Alt Z, Alt X, Alt C. And then target arena 1, 2, 3, you could do something like Alt A, Alt S, Alt D. I do recommend you have them in a succession like that. It just makes it easier for your brain to comprehend, at least in my experience. Then of course you can use control as a modifier, you can use shift as a modifier. Tab is also a button you can use for bindings. I mean, with that being said, that's a pretty good idea. You can also, if you want, get an MMO gaming mouse. It's just something you can do. That's just to give you guys an idea of what I do. I mean, you can get creative. There's no excuse to not having everything bound. It's really easy. Bindings and macros kind of together. A lot of people, when it comes to like targeting and having focus ability bound and focus macros, some people will also have like, for example, if you play a mage, they'll have like arena 1, 2, 3 polymorph bound. So like they'll have a macro like this. New poly, it'll be like /cast at arena 1 polymorph. I don't know if that's the exact way, but it's basically like this. And what it does is just allows you to polymorph arena 1, 2, 3. So what they'll do is they'll have this polymorph arena 2 and polymorph arena 3 bound, and that way they don't have to target or do anything. They can just use their S arena on test mode. So obviously if you have this add-on S Arena, which we'll talk about later, you can see Arena 1, Arena 2, Arena 3, and if you want to poly the first person, you use the first macro, the second person uses the second macro, the third person uses the third macro, and it's actually a very efficient way of doing it. I don't do it that way. I like to use Target Arena 1, 2, 3 and Focus Arena 1, 2, 3, and I basically just use those binds. On my mage, I do use Counterspell Arena 1, 2, 3, which is another good way of doing it. Obviously, with an add-on like this, you can see cast bars, and it's not that hard to just see what like Arena 2 is casting. Oh shit, I don't have this guy targeted or focusing, and he's casting Fear, boom, CS with my Counterspell Arena 2. So I think that's a good idea as well. Then just making like focus macros is really easy as well. /cast @focus and then spell. These are like the different examples of macro. I'll show you again. /cast @Arena 1. I mean, you can do Arena 2, Arena 3, Arena whatever the fuck you want. I think you can actually, I think there's yeah, there is. You can do @Arena Pet 1 too. So if you want to get really creative, you can make binds for Arena Pet. That's what this one does. It used to back in the day when you could provoke pets, spam my provoke on Arena Pets. So like if I was fighting against a hunter, every time a Rising Sun kicked, it would taunt his pet and it would break traps on me and stuff, which is really cool. But you don't need that. I don't know if I showed you focus at focus. It's just an easier way of doing it. You can do target equals focus, but this is actually easier. It's less code. So you can do that. Arena Party 1. Is that /cast @Arena Party 1? Or is it just Party 1, huh? I think it's just Party 1. @Party 1. And then you can have like dispel macros. So for pretty much, I'll tell you what I do on Monk. Basically any action I'd want to do besides directly attacking my main target, I have bound in a focus macro. So I can do that to my focus target easily. So I can focus kick my target, or focus pummel, or focus spear hand strike if you want to get really, yeah, I can focus spear hand strike. I can focus paralysis my target. What else? I used to have focus grapple weapon, focus storm earth and fire, so I can throw my image on the target if I want to. I have detox bound and tiger's lust bound for my teammates. So I don't have to click on them. If my healer says, hey, I need a dispel, then I can just press my dispel healer macro that I have. Or if he needs Tiger's Lust, I can just press that macro, and that way I don't have to take away from the target I have currently. I mean, if you play like a Resto Druid as well, for example, I recommend having like dispel for your teammates bound as well as yourself. Just little things like that are helpful. If you're Druid, and more examples I could give you of like focus macros, you could use like focus Fairy Swarm, focus Cyclone, focus Entangling Roots. What other macros are kind of useful? Let's take a look at what I use on this guy, and maybe it'll give me some examples. This is kind of just like a guide for every class. I don't want to get into the specifics of like Monk or whatever, but yeah, definitely focus macros, Arena 1, 2, 3 macros. Like I said, if you want to use like Counterspell Arena 1, 2, 3, Polymorph Arena 1, 2, 3. On a Monk, you could have Paralysis Arena 1, 2, 3. On a warrior, you could have charge Arena 1, 2, 3 if you really wanted, but I don't think that's necessary. And I guess that's really it for macros. Can you guys think of anything else? Yeah, things that like buff your teammates are important to have in macros sometimes. So like if you're a mage and you want to have like Ice Ward bound for your teammates, you can do that. Or if like you're a Shadow Priest, you can have Powered Shield bound to your teammates. As a healer, I guess if you're lazy to communicate, you can make macros that like say you do stuff. So for example, I guess someone in the chat's talking about a macro that when he's a healer he likes having this bound, or he likes his teammates having this bound, which is like blah blah blah. It'll be it'll be like this. / use the medallion, and then also / party. Oh my god, I used my trinket. I don't have one. Or you don't have to be that ridiculous. You can just say I trinket. And then when you press this macro, if you were in a party, I would say a trinket. And that way he would know. I guess you can have stuff like that if you want. Oh yeah, harm macros are cool. Alright, here, this is another one I'll show you. Let me log on my mage really fast. I want to show you the harm macros because I actually think they're really good. I guess mouse over macros are another thing you can do. Why do you have so many macros? Because I love macros. This is kind of a cool macro I discovered, and it actually is good for a lot of different abilities. Specifically if you're a mage, but you can have harm macros. So Ice Nova, here I'll show you. Okay, so Ice Nova as an ability If you're targeting someone, it'll use it on them. If you have no one targeted, it'll actually just use it on yourself and kind of waste the ability. You get the AoE damage effect, and like I think it roots everyone around you, but for the most part, it's just a waste of damage. So like, if I have no one targeted, for example, and I press Ice Nova without my harm macro, it just will use it on myself and with it. The reason this is important, say you're fighting against like a druid or any night elf or a rogue or anyone that can re-stealth or vanish, and you're spamming Ice Nova on them and they happen to re-stealth right before you press it, it'll actually waste the ability and it'll Ice Nova you instead of them, which really sucks. The way I kind of got around that is with this harm macro, so it won't actually activate. I don't know all the abilities in the game that this is important for, but this is definitely something you can use. So the reason I have this, and I made this originally, is because, yeah, if like a rogue vanishes and you're spamming Ice Nova on them, it just won't work. It won't do anything unless you're targeting someone that's an enemy. Yeah, you could use a mouse over macro for killing totems. How does a mouse over macro even work? Let's see. Mouse over macro. Wow. Let me look it up for you guys. Okay, yeah. So, mouse over macro looks something like this. Let me make a new one. Blah blah blah. Slash target mouse over. Slash target mouse over. Slash cast ice lance. Is that it? We'll see. I guess we'll figure it out. That doesn't work. I don't think you need these to exist parts. I think I didn't mess it up. And I also think ice lance is 2 words, so I'm dumb. Nope. Is it? It is. Why isn't this oh, here. There's no space. That's what it... Oh, there you go. It works. Okay, perfect. So if you want to, like, kill totems, you can have, like, a mouse over ice lance, but I don't know if you're actually lazy to, like, click on the totem. As an example. It's kind of cool. I've never had a macro like this before. You don't actually have to... You can have these kind of mouse over binds for like dispelling your team too. So if you want to use like a mouse over decurse, you can. If you want to use your mouse for it, you can do whatever you want. I recommend experimenting with different things. A lot of different players use a lot of different things. It doesn't matter how good you are, but I do recommend having like binds for everything. You want to be as efficient as possible. If there's ever a time where it's like, fuck, I could have won that game, but I was just too slow. And there's probably a reason you were too slow, and making like your binds more efficient is a great way to like overcome that a little bit. Anyways, I think that's all for like the basic macros and like keybinds that I recommend.